Welcome to the 65th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, we'll talk about our thoughts about the future of tabletop gaming. The future, Conan? I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called MilkCan. And because most of the folks at MilkCan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. And we are working on it. We'll mention that in a little bit. But what have you been doing lately? I know that you just got back from
Vegas.
Viva Las Vegas,
Yes,
indeed.
so I was gaming, but gaming with money.
Sure.
Although I learned how to play craps, which was amazing.
Is it, though?
Well, I made money, so.
You can start teaching the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you were there for a bachelor party thing, not just for...
Yeah, I'm the best man for my brother's wedding, so
Nice.
I got everyone together down there, and we had a good time. It was still indoor mask policies all around, which I was kind of surprised being in Vegas.
Yeah.
Even they were doing that. So,
Yeah, that's
but good thing, because I did not get the COVID. So.
yep, also good.
Yeah.
But
But
they didn't have any cool, like, you couldn't go and play, like, Magic for money or, like, Dungeons & Dragons for money or anything like that?
Nope.
No.
Nothing.
Well, maybe someday.
Not that I saw anyway.
Yeah.
There's probably some place that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And I've been on the road a lot. Kids having tournaments and basketball games and
Lots of kids' sports.
Yep. But yeah, I did start playing the 1,000-Year-Old Vampire RPG. Just barely started, but so far I like it. The book as a physical copy is really cool looking. So
Now again, this is a solo RPG.
yeah.
Like, so how does I don't even know how that kind of thing works.
So for this one, like the mechanic, like once you set up your character sheet, the way they have it is they have kind of like a choose your own adventure style, like little snippets of numbers. And for this one, you roll a 6 and a 4. A D6 and a D10, and you subtract the 6 from the 10 number.
Okay, all right.
And that tells you what number to go to next. So if I rolled a 10 and a 6, I'm going to go to number 4 after I start with number 1.
Right.
If I roll -2, you can go back. So there's some events where it's like if it's the first time you've done it, do this. Second time, this, and then it tells you stuff, and then you have to basically decide how is your character going to do this, and then you make decisions which affect your character sheet, which will then roll forward going.
So if you like the concept of role-playing games but are maybe concerned about or anxious about actually role-playing with other folks, something like this is kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, absolutely, because you can go they're like, they're like, you can go as simple as just updating your character sheet and just going on. They're like, or you can go like full into it and like actually like write up journal entries as though, this is your actual journal. So you have to kind of, get into the mindset of the character and write up the whole full journal.
No, that's very cool. I mean, I we've talked a little bit about solo gaming and stuff like that here on the podcast and everything. And I, because of the pandemic and all that kind of stuff, I think that you're going to see, like, it's not going to be the way things go per se, but it is definitely a new thing that before people maybe, I don't want to say scoffed at, but people are like, well, why would I play solo gaming? I'll just play with my friends. Well, now there's some reasons why, and
right.
So it's very cool that is also not a dull or, unlikable experience that you can sit there and it's like you're building a story, and admittedly it's by yourself, but it's still fun that way. I think.
Absolutely, yeah. You don't have to like go, all right, who wants to play a vampire role RPG with me?
Right, yeah, that's true too. Because people hate vampires.
Right. They suck.
There we go. All right, nice.
I'll be here all week, folks.
Indeed, yeah. You been doing anything else besides that? You've been Vegas and vampires. That's basically it.
Yep, Vegas and vampires.
All right, that's fair. I understand that. I've been basically just working on, what have I been doing? On Twitch, I've been working on the last of my Chaos models for my Chaos Warband for Warcry. It's a particular flavor of Chaos. That sounds terrible, actually, a flavor of Chaos. It sounds icky. Slaves to Darkness is the particular varietal, let's say. It's a varietal, like it's a wine.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's way better than like dentist toothpaste.
Right, exactly, yeah. But, so the Slaves to Darkness, I'd painted 5 Chaos Warriors. I painted 1 Chaos Lord, and now I have the Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, I think is the name of the... I don't think it's the guy's name. I think it's the species. He's like a big lizard dog, kind of, and there's this Chaos dude riding him. Most of the big lizard dog is painted now, and I'm going to be finishing up on the actual guy riding the lizard dog, and so that'll be fun. Yeah, and then speaking of Warcry, also... 2 things. I got to play some Warcry with my friend Sam Lenz on Saturday, so that was cool. We got together at the local shop. He has moved to, I'm going to say civilization, but it's the town I live in, which is it's civil enough, I guess. It's better than... He was living in a farmhouse next to a cornfield out in the middle of nowhere, which he enjoyed, but his internet was nearly non-existent. So now he has moved back to a town, and now he has much better internet and all that kind of stuff. He'll start streaming on Twitch again. He was telling me that videos that were taking him 19 to 20 hours to upload when he was at the farmhouse are now taking 45 minutes. So that's better, is what it is.
That's
right
a little
there.
better.
Yeah. So yeah, his YouTube videos uploading is going to be a lot quicker, which will be real nice. So that's good. And then also related to Warcry as well, my next Warcry warband that I'll be painting on Twitch is going to be a group called the Osiarch Bone Reapers, which are a relatively newish Age of Sigmar group. I don't know, faction. Yeah. Faction is the word. Yeah, and they're not skeletons. They're not. It's weird. They're. It's not that they're just like reanimated skeletons. These guys take bones. And, well, they reap them. That's why they're called the Bone Reapers.
Okay.
And so instead of making, like, an animated skeleton that's going to go out and fight and do stuff, instead they just take a whole bunch of skeleton parts and other bone, and they reshape it into a bone construct. So it's like a big, chunkier skeleton. He's still made out of bone, but he's not, like, real skinny. He's like 5 people's
so he's got
skeletons.
Some meat to him, but not real
Not
meat.
actual meat, no, as it turns out. Yeah, no, they're thicker, but they're like literally every Mortec guard, which is kind of the base kind of troop dude, or troop person, I suppose, is technically like 5, 6, maybe 7 different souls all stuck together inside of this kind of construct made out of a bunch of people. And so there you go. Anyway, long story short is they're kind of interesting looking undead, but they don't look exactly like skeletons because they are like skeletons on steroids a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
When I was at that convention in Lake Geneva, the Dragonfall, I bought a set of used Bone Reapers, the Mortec Guard, that were already pre-painted to a okay degree, but I'm going to fix them up. And then I was like, well, if I just add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, I can make myself my own warband, and it's bringing pretty cool for Warcry. So I'm heading in that direction.
Sweet.
That's what I'm working on next after I get done with these Chaos guys. But I'm doing the texturing, and I'm going to prime them up and get them ready to go so that when it's time to switch over, then I'll just go cool and switch over, and then that's the next thing I start working on Twitch. So there's that. Also, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I was in Naperville, Illinois, at Holy Havoc, which is a convention for, it's not a convention, it's a tournament. It was a 72-person Age of Sigmar doubles tournament. So basically, there were 18 tables, and you had 2 teams of 2 at each table fighting against each other with 1,000 points each. So each side was 2,000 points and all that kind of stuff. And they do it for charity. They raise money for a homeless shelter in the area and that kind of stuff. I think they raised for almost $4,500, so that's pretty cool. But it was fun because I got to hang out with my friend Vince and Tom and meet new other people and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was only about a 3-hour drive away. So, and they're going to be doing another one sometime in the spring. And they're going to just stick to doing the doubles from now on. They used to do a singles tournament in the spring and a doubles tournament in the fall. And the doubles tournament's been so popular, they're just going to stick with that. You know, you go with what your which you're good at, I guess. I think it makes a lot of sense. And it also gets more people in the door, so they can put more money towards the charity and all that kind of stuff. So that's also helpful. That's pretty much all I got going on since last time as far as the hobby stuff is concerned. For the app updates and things like that, the GameFor Library Manager 1.1.0 is out.
Yep.
And so that's pretty cool. And we are, and I think we said this pretty much last time too, but we're still working on Store Finder. That'll be the first kind of module to the new GameFor. Instead of waiting until we have all of it ready to go and then launching it, which will take probably a lot longer, we're going to be kind of launching it part by part. Mm-hmm. It'll all be one single app. The game, like Library Manager is a totally separate app. Right. But the actual GameFor app will be launching first with Store Finder, and then eventually, we'll start doing whatever the next one might be, which might be Convention Finder or whatever, looking for players. It depends on what we get at. But yeah, so that'll be nice for people who are looking for local gaming stores. We're going to start, and we know that obviously because of COVID, there are some game stores that didn't make it, so that we're going to have to kind of rely on crowdsourcing to know, how good our database. Our database, when we hibernated things in mid-2020, I think at that time our database of game stores was probably about the best out there that there was.
I would say that was what we were told by many other people and
in the industry who were like looking at it and going, huh. So at that point we had about 6,600, maybe 6,700 different stores worldwide listed in that database. So we know that the database is going to need to be, obviously tweaked. And so we're also looking at designing a way to make it easier for people to say, hey, this place moved, closed, hey, this place opened, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that we can update things and make it a little bit less work intensive on our side. In the past, what we were doing is people would send us an email, and then we would have to basically go into the database and actually manually fix stuff, and it was kind of a pain.
Yeah.
The shoemaker's kids never have any shoes kind of situation.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if we were doing that for a client, we wouldn't go, oh, yeah, just go in the database and fix it. That'd be fine. No, we would actually do a front end. So
like when we first launched, like that first week, I remember being in Reno. We were in Reno still.
Mm-hmm. We were at the Gamma trade show.
Yeah, and I was I didn't even have an admin form to enter the stuff in.
You were just literally going into the database and doing injections
manually. Oh,
yeah. So we're like, well, technically it's working. It's just not ideal. But on the user's end, it was working fine. It's just on our end, it was a bit of a mess, and we're going to try to fix that up too.
Some of the bubble gum and duct tape will be removed.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna take a bunch of hair with it probably.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. That's not good. So yeah, today's subject. I think I was brushing my teeth. I don't even know. I was like sitting there and I was brushing my teeth, getting ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden. And this happens once in a while, but the idea for the episode sort of just popped into my head. Now, frequently, like at first I was like, oh, okay, what's the future of tabletop gaming? Okay, cool. Maybe that's an end of the year kind of, episode. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, the future is literally tomorrow. And then the next day after that, the next day. We don't have to wait until the end of the year until then we can start talking about the future. The future is going to come whether we want it or not.
Right. We're going to get out in front of all the other future-looking podcasts.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So the future of the future
all the other podcasts talking about the future, they're going to wait till New Year's, and we're going to do it early, and then we're going to look like geniuses. Or something. So yeah, what is the future of the tabletop gaming industry? Now, this is not really like I think that people can look at this maybe at least as the title and be like, oh, this is like doom and gloom, like everything. But first of all, let's be perfectly frank. The tabletop industry has been growing year after year after year for like the last decade, if not more.
I would say almost, it's been, now you've got almost like 15 years. Yeah.
Like when I was started doing some research and I just came across a tweet that was like, it just was, I think the tweet just said something like, and then it was a link to a thread of different articles going back about every 2 years for the last decade saying, tabletop gaming is on the rise. And then it's an article from another company going, oh, tabletop gaming is exploding. And it's just every 2 years, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so This is not us saying, we're not talking particularly about sales. We're not particularly talking about, whether they're going to go up or down, anything along those lines. Obviously, well, I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I personally don't believe in infinite growth, but we're a very small industry on a good-sized planet, and so we've probably got growth for a while, unless something real weird happens.
Right.
But again, that's not something to bank on. I'm not telling you to go out and buy stock in anybody you can buy stock. Well, I guess technically Games Workshop has stock. I'm assuming. Yeah, but I mean on the English stock market, not on the American. I suppose there's probably Hasbro. That's technically they must sell stock. Anyway, I'm not telling you to go out there. I'm certainly not a financial advisor. Good Lord. But yeah, so what we're talking about more for the future of the tabletop gaming industry is like what kind of things are we going to see both in formats, technology, that kind of stuff, but also in movements in different types of games and in different things going on in the actual gaming industry.
The trends.
Exactly, to some degree. Now, not necessarily like, it's going to be all about train games or whatever. Like, not even that. Like, that's, maybe it will be.
You heard it here first, folks. It's all going to be about covered wagons.
If my wife was involved, it would be all about train games. She loves the train games. So kind of across the board, no pun intended.
Wow.
I know that you are, but that was seriously not. But across the board, what you're going to see going forward in the tabletop gaming industry, and this is I would say that this is a cat that has been let out of the bag, and you can't put it back in the bag. You ever try to put a cat in a bag?
Like a live one?
Yeah. My wife's father... when they would take their two cats at one point to the vet, he would put them both into a pillowcase, the same pillowcase, and that's how he would take them to the vet.
Wow.
I know, right?
Like pillowcases, I think of like Jake the Snake Roberts,
Right, with the snake in there. Yeah, no.
I've never a cat.
Two cats in the same pillowcase, now we're going to the vet. That's, I don't even know. No, she tells me that, and I'm like, that's not even true, but she's like, no, it is. Anyway, not getting out of it's been released. There's going to be more streaming. There's going to be more podcasts like this one, and there's going to be more YouTube. There's going to be more content. 10 years ago, was that Tabletop Show with Will Wheaton? Was that 10 years ago, or even less than that?
No, it was
10 years ago was 2011.
Probably right around there because I was.
Yeah,
it was before Milk Can, so that was 6.5 years ago. 7.5 because I was at. So it was right around that time because it was when I started it. So, I go by where I was, what company I was at.
Sure, it makes sense.
I've swapped too many companies.
Yeah. But the thing is that, it used to be that there was like Dragon Magazine back in the day. I think I don't know if they still make it or not.
I've seen it in a while, but
I don't know. Yeah. You got White Dwarf Magazine from Games Workshop, and there were different magazines of this type and that type. Scry, wasn't that a magazine about Magic the Gathering? Scry Magazine?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, nowadays it's all about you're going to go and watch people play D&D. Critical Role is a juggernaut that cannot be stopped.
Right.
I don't think it should be. I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying that if someone tried, good luck. You know what I mean? And you've got Twitch, like I've been mentioning, and you've got YouTube, and you've got all this stuff. Websites as well. Obviously, websites have been around longer than all this other stuff. I mean, YouTube's 2006, but still, like really, people using this as a function of like not just being like, hey, these are the new games that are coming out. This is information about the new games, but also like how to play, how to paint miniatures, how to strategize properly in your Magic the Gathering deck building and all that kind of stuff. And then also just straight up entertainment. People go to watch stuff like Critical Role because it's just they really enjoy it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so it's taking the concept of like, well, this is a game that you would play, and then you're like, well, I'm just watching somebody else playing it. It's like watching football or hockey or any of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe you played some football when you were a kid in high school, touch football, flag football, whatever. Now you're watching football. You don't really even play to that level or whatever. In this situation, at least with D&D, you may still be also playing in a weekly campaign, but you really love watching their stuff. I mean, people have got real attachments to the characters in all of these different online things, especially like you're starting to see, merch. You're seeing there's comic books out about, Critical Role and stuff like that. I mean,
they have their own figure.
They got their own line of pre-painted figures and stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the thing about board gaming, tabletop gaming in general, all that kind of stuff, is that you are seeing people, and it's not just in our industry, it's in all kinds of hobbies. You're seeing people who are like, you know what, I'm going to make my own show about whatever, you know what I mean? And sometimes they last and sometimes they don't, but you know, the idea is that there is a lot of content out there, and if you get some success at it and you get some feedback at it, you usually keep going. And if you're just kind of yelling out into the void and nobody cares because maybe you're not doing it the way they want it, or you're not, your point of view is not the same, well, then sometimes those things fall apart. But there are definitely people out there, because we all have the technology now to be able to stream to the entire planet, like pretty much whenever we want. That's not going away anytime soon. And if anything, it's probably going to accelerate, and you're going to see more and more kind of niche, creators being able to create content about specific aspects of certain games, I mean, like all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And it's getting easier to, like, the tools to do it is becoming more accessible and easier. And
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just telling you about that,
right.
That YOLO box. It's this little 8-inch kind of tablet-y sort of computer thing that you can plug like 3 different HDMI cables into and a webcam, and it does all the streaming and everything built in, and it's like a little tiny portable, production studio that someone from NBC 15 years ago would have absolutely just fell over looking at.
Right.
They're like, wait, you can all over the world, and it's at this little tiny box.
I have 2 semis that just pulled up, and,
right.
and 5 technicians have to put that together.
Exactly. Yeah, and we still can't like stream to like Shanghai or whatever like that. We'd have to go through 16 different satellites, and so that stuff. And if you're like, geez, that sucks, I really hate all that extra content out there, then my first question is, well, why are you listening to this podcast? Like, because we're part of it, you know what I mean? That's weird. Anyway, but, fair point. If you don't like it, that's fine. But unfortunately, then it's not going away. We're going to see, if anything, like I said, probably more of it. Another thing that we're going to see, I think, across the board, again, that's already not a pun, but now it's turning around to become one. I think you're going to see a lot more focus, and we've been seeing this over the last several years, 2 years maybe, an increased focus on diversity and inclusivity.
Yeah. Last 3-4 years, I think there's been more of I would say less of a casual and more of a defined, like, intentional footing towards it. Whereas before, I think it was just gradually coming, and now I think the awareness has finally hit where they're intentionally making sure that they're doing it.
Well, the companies are starting to talk about it. Right. It used to be just a lot of people, online and social media saying, hey, this and this, and that's how these things kind of get started. And then you have companies making statements like there's the relatively famous Games Workshop statement from a couple of years ago about kind of like Black Lives Matter and then inclusivity and all that kind of stuff that kind of ended up with basically saying, hey, if you don't feel this same way, well, you will not be missed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the kind of
don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the "you will not be missed" statement caused a lot of hubbub, but it's something that I think needs to be said, and it's also super important that the big companies start kind of saying that kind of stuff. Definitely, Wizards of the Coast has been saying it. And there's obviously pushback. You see, people online, but I think that generally there's an overwhelming acceptance and interest in adding to diversity and inclusivity within tabletop gaming.
And this industry is kind of unique because it's kind of that nerdish culture. Mm-hmm. So there's probably very few people in it that were not at one point on the other end of the bullying and
absolutely
excluded. Versus, like when you go talk to let's pick on football for instance. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of football fans that were the stars and they had, didn't get picked on. They were the ones usually doing the picking.
Sure,
not all of them, but some of the ones.
You get more of that where we were the big deal in high school because I was on the football team and this and that and all that kind of jazz.
So I haven't seen what it's like to be picked on and excluded from. So people are just whining and complaining.
Exactly. Right. Whereas the people who are generally within our kind of wheelhouse are looking at it from a lot of them. I think are coming from a place of like, I was picked on or whatever because I like to play D&D when I was in 5th grade and all that kind of stuff. And now, and I think that sometimes it's interesting. I think sometimes it comes to a place where you say, you know what, I don't want to do that same thing. I don't want to pick on people. I want to be inclusive. And then there's other people I think that sometimes are like, well, now I'm going to be the gatekeeper. Right. And I personally don't understand that. You know what I mean? But that I think is kind of the struggle that the industry has. But I feel like at least the overall messaging is heading towards, that gatekeeping stuff's no good. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm all for that. Saying that it's no good, I'm not all for gatekeeping. I don't even have a gate. We don't even have a fence at our house. So no, definitely. I mean, we have a garage door because otherwise raccoons. But I think that it's really cool, and I'm really glad that it's something that we're seeing more and more from the overall. Again, not just the fans of the industry, but the actual industry is starting to say, "Look, this isn't cool, and we're not doing this anymore." And they're taking, steps towards hiring more people of color, hiring more LGBTQ, that kind of stuff.
Making
folks,
sure,
making sure,
and
that there's actual
representation.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. And that's also very important as well. Kind of vaguely sort of attached to that, but maybe not necessarily, is also the concept of not only are we looking at, we've got to change kind of the way that we hire to some degree, but also just overall labor in general.
Yeah, there's COVID. I think the biggest impact long running is going to be workers' rights.
No, you're right.
It does not seem like it seems like it's going further from where it was than like kind of like stopping or rescinding. Yeah.
Like workers' rights and workers that stuff is not a fad. I don't think. You know what I mean?
No, I think everyone kind of they saw. I think pretty quickly how valued they were by their employers, by what was happening and
absolutely
everything, and I think that made everyone kind of go, maybe this isn't the place for me, or, like one of my brother's close friends was a bartender for probably 10 years, I think, professionally, like loved it and stuff, but then got laid off, and now he's gone back to school, and now he's a IT network engineer type guy, and loves that, but it's something he never would have done or beforehand.
Sure, yeah.
But now he's like, oh wait, I could have more stability and do something else that I kind of like.
And then that issue, of course, is then, as we're starting to see all over the place, is then tying into a lot of service industries who are still expecting to pay what they were paying before, going, well, now we can't find any people. Well, that's because a lot of the people decided to go get something better,
Right.
So within tabletop gaming, however, what we're starting to see within this whole concept is the belief in kind of like, again, working conditions and labor rights. Paizo Press, Paizo Productions, Paizo, whatever, the guys that make Pathfinder. They recently had basically their organization, their workers got together and decided they wanted to unionize. So there's a actual Paizo union and that kind of stuff. Because the thing is in our industry, and this happens in video gaming too, it's a lot of like, well, you want to make games, don't you? Right. So we're going to work you to death, and we're going to not pay you very much. That seems to be a thing that's been going on. Because it's a fun
industry. Exactly. We could find 10 other people want to make,
may want to make cool, fun games. And you're like, yeah, but you work me 12 hours a day or more, and I don't ever get weekends off when we're at crunch time and all this kind of stuff. And there are people that they'll take that, but you're seeing more and more folks that are like, that's not the way that it's supposed to go. So yeah, Paizo was a big one that made a lot of news kind of headlines within the industry recently. Wormwood, the people that make the fancy wooden stuff, like wooden cool gaming tables and like dice boxes and all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. They've got a very popular YouTube channel where they have this very like social media forward, hey, we're talking like every week we're doing like vlogs about what's going on here at all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the CEO I think stepped down because they were like, or something, they like definitely some stuff went on. I didn't know a ton about it, and I didn't get a chance to watch the entire video, but I did, they did definitely have a big worker shakeup there and it was very visible because they put it on the YouTube channel. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of, I think there were some blogs that started coming up to the surface of people quitting and stuff, and mass numbers. And
then another relatively well-known in the industry company Cards Against Humanity. They had a bunch of people basically coming out talking about a real toxic work atmosphere with sexism and racism and that kind of stuff going on in the actual place. You know what I mean? And so for all the things that as I've heard all these kind of things about Cards Against Humanity, like they took money from this thing that they sold and then they bought like land, like so that the wall that Trump was trying to build couldn't go through that land. And so they've done these different things, and they've like taken a bunch of money and then made it so that the workers in their Chinese factory could take like a month off to hang out with their families and stuff like that because they don't get Christmas off or whatever, that kind of jazz. So there's times when you're like, oh, that's really cool, but as it turns out that's sometimes a lot more front facing, and the things that are kind of happening day to day are not so great. So that kind of stuff we're starting to see, everything from something as much as just like, oh, hey, at Paizo we're trying to make it so that we've got better rights for our work conditions, to full-blown, like, kind of, I know there's been several different other ones that have popped up. There's was it Broken Token? There was a bunch of talk about that.
Yeah, maybe it's Broken Token was the one I was thinking about.
There's a lot of them all over the place. And a lot of these company situations can be kind of toxic, and we're going to be seeing a lot more focus, I think, on that because it's not acceptable now. I mean, just because, it's the games and they're fun, oh, yay, we get to work on games, that's cool. It's still, you got to have a good work environment.
Which reminds me, we're going to have to push our daily beatings back an hour
Oh,
today.
man, a whole hour, jeez. So yeah, and the other big thing that we're also starting to see, I think, more and more, and we've talked a little bit about this, I think, on the show too, is there's this global supply chain sort of problem right now.
Huh? I had not heard that.
No, you had not heard that. No, yeah, it's difficult, and we did a video, or not a video. This isn't video. You can't see us. Can you?
Well,
we did a podcast kind of about that kind of stuff a little bit, or at least we talked about it in some of the recent podcasts, and about how the COVID thing is just the beginning, and it's a lot of shortages from like computer chip manufacturers, and there's not enough shipping containers, and this and that. Not enough
workers are mining the right thing, and
that's where you get the meeples from. Is from the meeple mines,
right?
And those guys are all calling it sick.
That's what they need. They need a bunch of the worker placement experts that play all the work.
Right? Yeah, the best worker placement people in the world. They need to figure out how to make the workers get placed better, maybe, and then kind of spread this out. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, get the game engine running again.
I'm not sure that's actually how that works, but it is. It's interesting to see how it's affecting the industry, and because of it, I think that we're going to start seeing more and more companies trying to produce their games a little bit more locally, so they don't have to get shipped from the other side of the friggin' planet. Just so that they can get into some Kickstarter person's hands or whatever. You know what I mean?
And I think they're starting to see. Issues with, as gas prices come up, not shipping as far, all the, the ecological situation, as global wages kind of become more stabilized, hopefully as the global economy it's going to eventually even out a little bit more, that it doesn't make sense to only have all your stuff in one country, especially, or if there's an issue with that country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like when, there's a typhoon that hits the Philippines and suddenly 98% of all the chips can't be manufactured. Well, that seems like a bad thing.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Maybe not everything will be built in your home state or home country, but I can see it being multiple places around the world being built instead.
It's way easier to get something, let's say, produced in Canada or Mexico and shipped to the United States, as an example, because that's where we live, than it is to get it shipped from, say, China or Indonesia or that kind of stuff. It's just logistics alone. So you're starting to, like, one thing I was talking about recently is the that new type of casting, that CO casting. Companies like Infinity, who are based out of Corvus Belli, is based out of Spain, but other companies like Monster Fight Club are starting to work with CO casting, which is a type of plastic injection molded, like, say, miniature plastic or casting, but they can do it in-house. They don't have to have a big, fancy, super crazy expensive steel mold and all that kind of stuff. So the new Cyberpunk Red skirmish game that Monster Fight Club is producing, all those miniatures are actually produced in their warehouse. They're just doing them themselves. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's really cool, and it's going to save them a ton of time and shipping and stuff like that and whatnot. So Yeah, we're going to start seeing, I think, a lot more of that. And we'll also talk a little bit more about miniatures a little bit later on. But so that's kind of the broad strokes over, across the board, as I've said several times now here, about what's going to be happening that we see coming forward.
Right. And speaking of board.
Oh, yes. Then going into board games, like specifically as we run down the 4 genres, and it's the 4 genres that we always talk about here at GameFor because they're the ones that we use in the app.
Right.
Board games, role-playing games, miniature games, and war games. But then you're going to say, but what about LARPs? I'm sorry. That'll have to be a different app, I guess. But board games, things that we're going to see going forward in the future. Obviously, all the stuff we've talked about has something in some way touching board games, whether it's the workers' rights, whether it's inclusivity, local production, that kind of stuff. Streaming and podcasts and things like that. Like I watch Board Game Geek's Twitch stream. Like they play. Like if you want to learn how to play a game, they have tons and tons and tons of situations where they show that off and everything.
Yeah, I think there's the industry acceptance of how to play games and producers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think all the ones that we talked to, that's like, well, yeah, we already have our how to play game done, so now we know the rule sets figured out.
Right.
Stuff.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
10
years ago that was not a thing.
No, exactly. You did a bunch of play testing and then you threw it out in the world and then hoped it worked. But this way you are putting out there, the same stuff, but you're also like, hey, if the rules aren't making quite sense to you right off the bat, just watch these videos and we'll show you the stuff.
Yeah,
and then
these people are expertly putting it together and explaining it.
Exactly. But I think a big thing that we're going to see, and we're already starting to see it now in board games, but I think we're going to see some more companion apps.
Yes.
And companion apps, there's like a fine line, I think, in the companion app situation. There's the companion app that is required to play.
Right.
And then the companion app that is like, it's a nice to have.
Right. And
it makes things more convenient.
Both you and I think we've talked about this endlessly that I understand the kind of allure of having like this, app that just is in the middle of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But 10 years from now, that app is not going to work on any of your devices.
Right, exactly. Like unless it's iPhone 27 will be all holographic and crap, or who knows what.
Let me still play my game.
Right, exactly. So we've worked with companies. We've worked with. Can we talk about the one that we?
Yeah, it's out now. It's
officially
out.
So we've worked with the OP.
The OP.
Or is it the OP?
I don't know.
I don't remember exactly. They used to be USAopoly, and they produced a game that is licensed off of Cuphead, the video game, and it's called the Fast Rolling Dice Game. Cuphead Fast Rolling Dice Game.
Yep.
And it's I saw it at Gen Con, like this year. They actually had the finished copy, and it's in stores now. And
I think
it's about to be in stores.
Yeah, some stores have it, and I think this month it's kind of rolling out as they get the supplies in.
But but basically it's a fast rolling dice game, and you have a timer that you can set on your phone or use the one on your stove, or I don't know. But or on the other hand, you could use the app that has the timer. It has fun noises from the video game, and at the end, music. Instead of having to figure out the score,
scoring,
you just go boop,
digital
boop, boop.
scoring. Yep.
Right. But if again in 10 years you pull that game out and you want to play with grandma or whatever, and the iPhones are, like I said, just stuck in your head now or whatever, and you could still play it, you just wouldn't have it. So the actual app. But yeah, we're starting to see that because it is a selling point for, I don't want to say impulse buy, but when you look at it and go, oh, there's also an app that I can use for this, that's cool.
Right.
But again, we're always telling clients, don't make
sure it's not required, but if you want, adding some stuff, like being able to share with your friends, like, look what score I got out of this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just being able to easily track and stuff. Absolutely. I see that happening more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then digital components, which are not necessarily the same thing.
No, but these are I think the best example of this is like the new Dark Tower. There was games in the 80s that started to do a little bit, but it was always...
That was Restoration
Games is doing the new Dark Tower. Yeah,
right,
and it's all computerized, mechanicalized.
It's a board game, but it has this plastic tower in the middle.
It's rotating and doing modes, and I think LEDs for different lighting effects. And
it just played sound back in the 80s, didn't it?
I think so.
I think you put batteries in it, and it did something. But now they've really taken that same concept and really
chips
tweaked it.
And components have gone down, and knowledge has gone up, and yeah, I can see more and more stuff doing that. Like you think of like the stuff that was in. They had them in the Wii, the PlayStation.
The motion controls?
No, it was from Disney. They had the little characters that you put on.
Oh yeah, like Skylanders.
Skylanders was one of
Disney Infinity or Infinite or something like that.
Right? Yeah, where it stored stuff on those components. Like I could see, stuff being like that. Where like some of your legacy games where components are storing information and.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's also it's a little different than this, but when I was at Gen Con, I came across a couple different companies that were selling solutions, some expensive, some really super cheap, to basically playing, like you're not even using a regular board, you're using a digital board. There was one company that was selling basically the concept you play on a flat screen TV that you basically lay on its back and you play on the top of the screen, and they were selling software for like, designing RPG maps and doing all this stuff. And it was like $35 for this software. It was like, and it, all this kind of stuff. And then there was another company that was selling a tablet basically that was like 16 inches by 16 inches square. And it was like $900. But then you could actually like touch the screen and move things. And plus you had your little tokens, like little RFD, magnetic.
Probably
I don't know. There was something.
Yeah,
NFC probably. Like on the underside. So when you set an actual model on the actual screen, then it would show what the model could see or its line of fire or stuff like that. And it was crazy. And they had like a booth and everything. And I was just like, but it wasn't particularly big. And it was like $900. And it had a lot of like, oh yeah, but these components are extra. And this is extra. And I was like, But, still step in the right direction. Let's hope. Right. I kind of liked the idea of just playing on the TV screen and using like relatively inexpensive software to build your own hallways and dungeons and stuff.
Like I think I was telling you that at Pinball, they now have pinball machines that are like they're a little over half is an LED screen, so the whole game can change. They can put different games in on the same,
like the actual play surface the ball moves around.
Yeah,
is an LED screen.
Is an LED screen,
that's
so
cool.
they can change the artwork and the modes and everything. And then there's some parts that just kind of pop out, and you can pop new ones in. So they're trying to make it more plug and play, so
more modular. So you're tired of this game, you just throw 3 different parts in there and put a new background in, and that's kind of cool. Yeah. So like those type of digital components in board gaming, whether it's something as, not necessarily simple, but something like the Dark Tower, where it's going to talk to you, and it's got an AI in it, and it runs off a tiny little piece of plutonium and all that. Okay, that's not true. It doesn't run off plutonium. I don't think it has an AI in it either.
Yeah, maybe. I
probably
don't know.
Probably
runs. We might be talking, a year from now, talking about the Dark Tower overlords. That
right. Yes. I, for one, welcome our Dark Tower overlords. But yeah, so anything from that to just going to straight up, I'm playing on a TV screen, as that's my board. I think you're going to see more and more of that within board gaming, just because it gives you a lot of variability. It gives you, and again, like we were talking about before, like these types of games with the companion apps, it's a situation where you can play against the board game with a companion app.
Yep.
That the board game itself is still very playable without the companion app, but if you don't have anybody to play with, then the companion app can be your opponent or opponents, that kind of thing. So, I think that's like I said, we're going to see a lot more, I think, of that kind of stuff coming forward in board games. Role-playing games, to some degree, obviously took a bit of a hit as well because of the pandemic. Not on sales that we've seen,
right,
but on the ability to get together with your gaming group and play. That being said, lots and lots of people have moved to Discord and Roll20.
Yeah, like online tools. Just
all the other stuff.
Bananas.
Exactly. And those online tools and online play are the things that we're going to continue to see increasing more and more. I remember a long time ago, I want to say it was from 3rd edition D&D moving into 4th, or it was just after the launch of 4th, they were going to release their own digital tools. Like their own 3-dimensional, here's like you move your miniatures. It reminded me, the stuff that I saw like at the demo at Gen Con reminded me a little bit kind of Tabletop Simulator, except it was all their stuff. Like here's the hallways in this dungeon, and you move your little tokens around, and this guy's within this distance, and he's going to do that. And all and it just never came out. Like they're like, oh yeah, no, this is in beta. We're working on it now, and it never got released. And at that time, there were already some companies that were starting to do, online play and that kind of tools for RPGs, not because of any kind of pandemic, but just sometimes your college group, they move away from each other. So you want to still play, and you live in different states or countries.
Right.
So we're going to, obviously that stuff is already out there, but I think that probably soonish, one could hope, we will actually start to see some of those tools maybe actually come up from the actual manufacturers. Or, I mean, like, do you think that, like, is Wizards or any of those companies, Pathfinder works with Roll20, don't they?
Pathfinder works pretty close with Roll20, and
like
D&D,
the company. Does Paizo work with the company Roll20, or is it? You see what I'm saying?
It's probably at least licensed.
Okay, yeah.
Because they've got everything in there, and then you think D&D Beyond is obviously close with Wizards.
Sure, yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
So,
but like, I think that we're going to start to see some more, because a lot of those things too, like especially like Roll20 is predominantly kind of two-dimensional for the most part, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some. They're starting to look at a little bit of some isometric and stuff like that, but yeah, it's not.
But it'll be real interesting to see which direction that goes as far as that's concerned, and also which direction it goes when we start talking more and more about the VR and the metaverse, such as it is, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like, that's, I think, another way that you could easily see role-playing heading in that direction.
I see them being early adopters. I mean, even just having voice filters for your character, for everybody else to hear. That way, people don't have to hear my horrible voice impressions.
Right, like if you want to be like an orc, instead of having to you just turn it to orc, and then it would just
right. Then it's
that's pretty cool. Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, we're going to definitely, with all the talk these days about the metaverse, is the metaverse, is that, they keep talking about that, is that only going to be owned by Facebook? I know that they keep talking about it, but I don't know if anyone's actually...
They're the meta, yeah.
Right, but I mean, people talked about the internet, but nobody owned the internet as a term. It was just what the World Wide Web and email and all these other HTTP things and blah, blah, got turned into.
Right.
And I'm wondering if the metaverse is the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty. Well, it's like tabletop. I don't know, tabletop simulator. Yeah, that's their property, and they're trying to make it so it's as generic as possible, so that it becomes like the Kleenex.
And the Xerox, right? Yeah, no, I don't know. It's interesting. I got to be honest. I'm not a big. The few times that I've tried VR stuff, it's made me a little queasy. So I don't know that I want to do that like for my RPGs.
Yeah, I don't know. Last time I used it was a lot better. Screen rates
technology is going to get better, certainly. Yeah, but
they've started figuring out why some people have a hard time. And
no, definitely. So, I mean, like I said, we're going to see more of that kind of stuff, I think, for role-playing games, because that's going to be something that, it's still a ton of fun to sit around and eat snacks and play with your friends and that kind of stuff. But in some situations,
we want a holodeck.
Sure, that's pretty cool too. I wouldn't mind that. But
yeah, baby steps.
Yeah, exactly, baby steps. No, that makes sense. But yeah, so I'm sure that the holodeck was originally designed in Star Trek basically for long distance role playing,
probably,
or naughty stuff. One of the two.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's really, one of the two.
Yeah,
or both.
Really. Yeah. Miniatures wargaming. It's basically 3D printing. I mean, and it's here, but it's going to continue to expand, I think. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know, miniatures are small, little, tiny people. They're not really people. They're made out of plastic or metal or resin or something like that. But they're the pieces that you use in the game. Mm-hmm. It's a strategy-style game. And generally, for years and years, you bought them from the person who made them, or the manufacturer, or the company who made them. And now... there's a person who sits in front of a computer and uses a computer to 3D sculpt a cool thing, and then you go onto their Patreon or whatever, and you get a copy of it, and then you print it at your house, and then it didn't have to get shipped anywhere or anything like that. You can make it big, small, tweak it, whatever, and it's been going on in the miniature industry for at least the last, in earnest, the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest trend in the last year-ish has been the custom modifications. I just saw a news site that's the first one that we ever saw was that they were primarily targeting RPG people, but it was
Hero Forge.
Sure,
yeah. Now you go there and you pick I want a skeleton with a sword and a shield, and you move things around, and then they give you an STL.
Now there's one for monsters.
Okay, cool.
That's you can add wings and horns and four-legged, and it's kind of like Hero Forge meets what was that game from Sid Meier? Not Sid Meier.
Spore.
Spore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Spore.
Yeah.
They kind of use like this, but you can create your monsters and demons for 3D printing. And then
there's a
Terrain
Machine.
Yep, Terrain Machine.
TerrainMachine.com, they do the same type of thing for terrain, where
For
you
buildings,
pick a building and then you kind of tweak each side and do little things all in your browser, and then it makes an STL, which you can then print or whatever.
Right.
And so you're going to see more and more of that. You're already starting to see companies that are not necessarily big. The biggest in the industry is still Games Workshop, but you're starting to see companies that are getting bigger who are like, we make rules that you can buy and download as a PDF, and we also make STL files, which are the files that you 3D print, that will work with these games. Or you can use them in other games. We don't care, And so like literally you can go to like One Page Rules is one of the biggest ones. You can go to onepagerules.com, download a game from them, download the miniatures from them, and start printing that night, and then have miniatures and start working and start playing and all that kind of stuff very quickly without ever getting anything brought to you by FedEx or UPS or whatever, except for maybe resin and stuff like that
your
for your
materials,
printer. Sure, yeah. But it's not it's a very different thing, and you're seeing more in companies being able to do things like print on demand, which we talked about relatively recently as well, and all that kind of stuff. So within miniatures, the ability to print these things at your house, I've had lots and lots of people ask me on the YouTube channel, do you think that Games Workshop's ever going to get into 3D printing, like, as a producer of STLs? And I don't know. I mean, maybe eventually someday when I'm, dead and gone, potentially. But in general, I don't know that that's what they're interested in. But there are other big companies that are starting to go that way. Another company, Modifius. Modifius is basically selling STL files for... I think Terrain for their Fallout game and Terrain for their Elder Scrolls game. So two of their miniature lines, which are both licensed, one from the Fallout video game and one from the Elder Scrolls, like Skyrim and stuff like that. They're selling Terrain STLs because they're like, we don't want to warehouse all this stuff, so why don't you print it? You know what I mean? Like, and it just makes a lot of sense. So, and Modifius is a good-sized company. They're not, Games Workshop size, but they're, bigger than my company. So yeah, they're doing, you're starting to see people going in that direction, and plenty of people who are producing models themselves, the STLs, and selling them through Patreon and all these different places, My Mini Factory and all that. And yeah, it's definitely already coming. And the thing that's just going to get that you're going to keep seeing is you're going to see better and better models and better and better machines to print those models and all that kind of stuff. So collectible card games is our last genre, and we're talking about, your Magics, the Gatherings, your Pokemans, all that kind of stuff. We're already starting to see, again, a little bit of this, aren't we? Because we're starting to see the kind of explosion of the Magic Arena over the course of pandemic, because people couldn't go to Friday Night Magic.
Right, yeah. It was picking up steam, I think, a little bit beforehand, but I think that just kicked it to a whole nother gear. Yeah.
So basically it's like a PC game, although I think they might have like console versions as well. I'm not 100% sure.
But it might even be, can you get it on mobile now?
That I don't know. There are other games out there like that, like Hearthstone, which is made by Blizzard, which is a big video game company. Right. They made a card-style game as well, and that's been available on tons of different platforms for quite some time. I know I've played it on the iPad back in the day, but that Magic Arena stuff really has started to take off, and you're seeing a lot of people who are playing that way just because they're not necessarily interested in having like a bunch of physical cards taking up tons and tons
of space. Or just they don't want to have to go spend $100,000 to play a certain card that they want to try.
Right, yeah. I mean, I don't exactly know. I'm sure that they're just not letting you use whatever cards you want. There's probably still, because they got to make money, so there's probably, at least at Hearthstone, you had to buy packs, and there was randomness to the packs and this and that. I don't know if you could sell and be like, oh, I got this super cool card, I'm going to sell it for real money to somebody else. Yeah, I don't know if they ever had an actual, marketplace like that.
They do have separate rules, though. Like, there's certain cards that are allowed and not allowed different in Arena.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I could certainly understand that. Yeah. But that is a big deal, at least within collectible card games, specifically the Magic the Gathering. I don't think there's a digital version of Pokemon. I mean, obviously there's Pokemon video games, but there's not I don't know if there's a digital Pokemon card game. You know what I mean? Like Magic Arena.
Right.
But
no, not that I know of.
Yeah. That's interesting. Interesting.
That's because Pokemon Go just was like, we're doing that.
Yeah, no, that's true. Pokemon Go made a bunch of money. But the thing is that you're seeing that kind of stuff, and but you're also seeing a huge explosion in those types of games anyway. Like you're seeing a huge explosion in the sales of Magic cards, Pokemon, like all that kind of stuff. People getting into fights in parking lots because, that kind of stuff. And what's interesting is that you're also then seeing the rise of direct sales, where Wizards of the Coast is like, hey, we're going to sell these packs directly to the users, and the stores who've been supporting us through 40 years or whatever, however long Magic's been around, we're not. They're not available necessarily through that, and that kind of stuff. And so there's some disgruntledness going on there. That being said, I think that's again a gate, a door that we can't close very easily. Like that horse has already gotten out and gotten a new job, or what. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that analogy, but you see what I'm saying. It's a situation where I just don't know what we're gonna, stores are unhappy about it, but stores were unhappy. Like independent game stores were also unhappy when all of a sudden Magic started showing up at Target and Walmart too.
Right.
And so it's a tough industry. I think that particular, like if your store is just that stuff, just the stuff from these guys, I think it's kind of tough.
I mean, and it's not happening just in this industry. I mean, think of movie theaters right now.
Right. Yeah.
How many movies are being released simultaneously, and how many? I don't see that trend completely stopping.
No, I mean, I know that they said, my wife and I watched Dune at home because we still haven't been to the theater in a long time. And I know that they said that the second part of Dune was going to be greenlit, and they were going to start. But they said they gave a date, and they're like only in theaters. Like they made a specific only in
curious
theaters.
If they'll look at the numbers and go, oh shoot, or go, oh see, this proves that it's better.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting. It's an interesting what do you call it? A experiment, really. Yeah. So but. One thing we do know about the future is that we don't really know everything about the future. We can make a bunch of...
I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to talk to you later about that.
I'll tell you after this.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. But it's one of those situations where, we can kind of prophesy or whatever here, but then there's always things that come out that you're just like, well, I had no idea that was
January 2020, we're like, this is going to be a fun year. Yeah. Welcome to the new decade. And lots of gaming in person coming up this year.
Oh, we got all kinds of plans for GameFor and all kinds of, it was great. Yeah. And then, but everybody had plans, didn't we?
Yes.
I still love it's one of those memes, and it says like my 2020 plans, or no, it's like, I think it was something like, my 2020 plans, and it's a picture of Murphy from RoboCop, like at the beginning of the movie before he's RoboCop, and then it says 2020, and then it's a picture of like Clarence Boddicker and all the other bad guys and stuff like that before they like shot off all his arms and legs and everything. Spoiler alert for a game, a movie from 40 years ago, but that one did definitely, that one I felt that one. So. If you've got any, comments or whatever, you could certainly, go onto the YouTubes there and mention what your thoughts about the future are, or whether we're crazy or whatever. I mean, a little bit. I'll take that. We are. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments, like I just mentioned, and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player, you just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.